Hi, my name's Hannah. I'm a secondary school English teacher and I've been teaching for 8 years.
Hi, I'm Lara Bakewell and I'm a primary school teacher.
Hello, I'm Lauren and I'm a senior nursery practitioner.
Hello, my name's Victoria Palmer. I'm a special needs primary school teacher and I have been a teacher for 8 years, and I work with children with varying abilities and sensory needs.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Zexer. I'm the library media specialist at Bavarian International School in Munich, Germany.
First of all, from my own experience, I always assumed that Usborne was a publisher for predominantly sort of primary school students. So I think making it really clear to secondary schools that you do have a lot of content for the secondary age range would be really important, first of all. I think that would really grasp our attention rather than just assuming the association with the primary school curriculum instead. I think maybe having some extracts on hand from the books that you have so that teachers can see which ones fit best for their curriculum, their students, and they can make a better informed decision before purchase would be excellent. I also think maybe making it really clear how they fit into the English curriculum. Schools don't often have a huge amount of funding for sort of sets of books for classes. So if there are books that are both interesting and enjoyable, as well as having some clear links to the curriculum, either sort of GCSE-wise or in terms of citizenship or well-being, that would be really beneficial to a school. They'd be much more interested if they could see that it was going to be beneficial from a multitude of different ways. And I think also making it clear that there is a modern selection. With the curriculum as it is, it's quite old-fashioned. Having anything that can maybe make it a bit, I don't know, more enjoyable. I think having books for Dear, Drop Everything and Read would be really good as well. And that'd be really beneficial for my school in particular, as well as others, I imagine too. Personally, I think emails often get discarded. I think we have so many coming through every day as teachers that I think that probably isn't the best way. I think personally, mail is the best way for us.
So I think, first of all, we're often emailed and sent things from various companies, like promotional materials. Email is good. Obviously, we get lots of emails from lots of different places. So I think the main thing that's really important to catch our attention is for it to be clearly headed and just to make sure that it's clear who it's intended for. So if, for example, it's about new books, new resources, if the email says what that's about, then when the school receives it, they can send it to the right person. So primary schools will have subject leads, so there'll be a head of English who, if it can get to that person, that's a really good start, because they can then look at it, decide whether it's relevant for our school. If it's for a particular key stage, they can then send it to the teachers within that key stage, so it can actually end up getting to the right person. That's really important. If it's sort of resources or sample materials, then again, I think it's just really important that it's either addressed to English subject lead, or if it's for particular year groups, you won't necessarily know who is in that year group, but if it actually says materials that are useful for Key Stage 1 or materials that are useful for Key Stage 2, then hopefully it should end up with the relevant person. And then, yeah, it's just a case of grabbing our attention, I suppose. Freebies always go down well. Information about what it is that you're offering, whether it's resources, whether it's events that are on, it's just being as clear as possible and giving us the information if it links in with how it links in with the national curriculum, so that we know how we can incorporate it into our teaching.
Getting hold of the managers of the setting first, purely because they deal with all the events, things that's going on, and we kind of look after the children. And if we do get attention brought to things, we kind of mention it to them, but it's them that make the decision at the end of the day, really. Either call or email, and basically just really publicising yourselves, and and the benefits of what the children are going to get from your events and your books and things like that. And I love reading with the children, and I love doing circle times and getting them really engaged, because I think you can learn so much from books and it's really important to them. So as soon as the managers feel, actually, the children can get this, this and this, and we can promote ourselves by saying we do this for the children, I think that gets their attention straight away.
I've had booksellers send me pamphlets, which is helpful to see a catalog of different titles and how a book sale would be set up, but something I can hold in my hand. Emails are overwhelming sometimes, and so I don't respond very well to email information. Coming to professional workshops or even online PDs, if Usborne was a presence there or had a booth that I could physically visit. Again, if I can see it in person, if I can hold the books in my hand, I like looking at the products before selling them to my population.
Okay, so the best way to get in contact with us is perhaps possibly ringing the school direct and asking to speak to the English lead to discuss what types of books that their school requires or uses, or how do they use the book. So that's one option, is just a call, or to ask for their email, to send them an email, which I'm sure many English leads would give their telephone number, especially if it's about what types of books would help, and if you could offer links to websites with resources, or links to popular books that might help, that they might be interested in. Anything that makes it easy for them to find books that would help their school, that would be a good way. Other ways that I thought that might help get our attention is through social media. Obviously, outside of school, I'm in lots of groups on my phone, one being a Twinkle group. And they do, I don't know if you've heard of Twinkle, but Twinkle have lots of Facebook groups, which I'm part of, and they promote resources, and teachers connect to each other through that. And they do have a specific special needs group. And another idea is often when you're working, it's nice to be given new ideas to teach and implement a story or a book. So maybe if there was an option to sign up for a story of the month and a link to that story and a blurb to what it was about. So yeah, they're just some ideas that I have.
Definitely author visits. We've had a few at my school, but they are mainly aimed at Key Stage 3. I think having someone on hand for Key Stage 4 would also be fantastic, because reading enjoyment does seem to take a massive dip during GCSE, possibly because of the text we study, but also I think it's just an age thing. So having sort of modern authors that are able to discuss things that maybe students aren't aware they can find books that cover those topics would be really, really good. I also think maybe having samples of the books of the visiting authors that can maybe be explored in class before the day of the book event would be really good, because often there seems to be very little continuity between what's happening in an English lesson and then a random book event. So having some link between what they've been looking at in class and the author on the day would be really good, and they would understand the importance and significance more if they had a bit of background on that author potentially.
I think with book events, it's about inspiring the children with their reading and with their writing. So pre-COVID, we had some live events. We did have a couple of authors come in, and it was just absolutely brilliant. I think that's one of the best ways to encourage children, especially maybe reluctant readers, to really get interested in books. So that always goes down really well. Anything that will excite the children and excite the teachers will help. Obviously, that's been really hard, sort of having live events over the last year. We've all got used to talking through screens. But when we are sort of up and running and able to do things in person again, it's great if we can meet people in real life. Things that will encourage children to read. So we're really lucky where we are. We have lots of really, really passionate readers. We have a really passionate head of English who is all over anything book related. And we have quite a few events in various year groups throughout the year, whether it's a reading challenge, sort of competitions throughout the year to encourage reading. But I think, you can never have too much of a good thing. So yeah, something interesting, something that will capture the children's attention, whether that's something to do with a particular author, whether it involves some kind of competition, because primary children are very competitive. They're very easy to excite and get enthusiastic about things given the right incentive and given the right starting point. That's one of the great things about primary teaching, because the children really are just so enthusiastic when you get their attention. So I think something that's fun, appealing, like I say, appealing to their competitive nature, but without it being too competitive and that going, the wrong way, something that all children can access, all children can have a go at, and that celebrates all children reading, no matter what their level.
To be able to build a partnership with parents around books. I know at a previous setting I did, we were really lucky and we had so many books. We set up like a little library where the parents can take it home and then they come in and share their story with us. And especially with COVID at the moment, we don't get the parents into the setting as much and we can't send things home, so they're not taking our books home and things like that. But it's being able to share a story with children at nursery and being able to share it with parents at home as well. Book fairs and especially sponsored reading events are great because it really encourages, actually we will join in, we will read a book at home. And so I mean, I know parents work hard and it's hard to juggle work and parenting and your work-life balance and things like that. So to actually be handed books instead and saying, if you can read this and get sponsors, that encouragement.
So from a book event, from a special needs school perspective, it would have to be a highly sensory and engaging, all-inclusive activity. So often when we introduce a book in class, we'll read the story on a PowerPoint, and then it will include lots of interactive sensory experiences. So if the book's about a sheep, we'll have a toy sheep that they can pass around and touch. And if you have some non-verbal children, we'll have symbols that they can touch and respond to, or electronics that would help them to communicate. And then we make sure that there's music, and then they can be active and moving. We tend to always include some sort of bubbles because they do love bubbles. And we start doing a lot of things to introduce stories such as attention autism, which is a way of capturing their attention through doing activities so that they focus on the story. So in terms of book events, we have had in the past, we've had authors come to school where they've read their story and they've made it very sensory. We do work with children who access learning via just a sensory pathway, but we have other children that access learning very similar to a mainstream child. It's just that they're in the special school because they have behavioural needs. So we have to make sure that the books can cater for sensory learners and those that are learning at their age. So we would do the sensory story reading, and then on top of that, we would ask them lots of comprehension questions for those higher achievers that we have in the class. So from a book event, we'd possibly look for someone to come into the school to read a story and make it very sensory and inclusive.
I like having promotional materials made beforehand that I can fill in with the dates and the school logo. I don't want to have to make those myself. I like having blurbs that I can put in our parent newsletter, again, that I don't have to make myself. I like having a professional here that can run the book fair. I can certainly assist. Obviously, much nicer to have a professional do that instead of me. I like having tokens or incentives for the kids to come to the book fair, provided by the company. If it's something that I could personalize, then like if you read 20 library books, then I can give you a coupon for using at the book fair. Usborne is unique in that the prices are always listed in pounds, and so it's hard for kids in the EU to make that translation to euro, and so we have very big price list comparison. So if the kid sees 11 pounds on a book, they know that they actually need to bring 12 euros. And so either the price needs to be in euros somewhere printed on it, or have a very large printed resource that I can point to and help my little learners in primary school understand that amount. Book fairs are the ones I'm most familiar with working with a company. I don't know that I've ever organized an author event through someone else. It's normally the librarians just organize that themselves. I guess it would be okay. I haven't explored that option. I'm open to possibilities. I would be open to sponsored reading events. I don't have much experience with them.
My school has got a really big EAL contingent. Over 50% of our school has English as a second language. So I think that's something that we need to look at. A lot of the texts we do study can be quite complicated. So having texts maybe that are simplified versions of GCSE texts would be really, really useful for us. I also think books that have links to other cultures often go down really well. We're currently studying Refugee Boy in Year 8 from Benjamin Zephaniah, and the students love that. It's quite simple in terms of content, but also relevant to a lot of them, and they feel like they get a lot more out of that than they do something from the 19th century, for example. Diverse characters and settings. Again, having such a diverse student body, texts that are set outside of the UK are often really valuable to them, and students that aren't, white British as well is something they often look for in texts and don't often find. Non-fiction for Key Stage 4 as well would be fantastic. The resources we have from exam boards are often quite dry, and I think having non-fiction texts that are, a bit more with the times, a bit more relatable would be really valuable for our students as well.
Again, really lucky that we have a lot of really good reading books. I think, again, you can never have too many, so we would never say no to more reading books, and our English coordinator is always on the lookout. But I have noticed our sort of non-fiction resources are looking a little bit, shall we say, tired, particularly things like dictionaries, thesauruses across the school. And I recently noticed when some very small infant children came into Year 6 to collect some atlases, that they're carrying away these books where the front covers are falling off, and then you're sort of doing some geography work with them and realizing that some of the countries don't even exist anymore. So I know that we could definitely do with more sort of non-fiction staple resources like atlases, dictionaries, thesauruses. Otherwise, I know we are pretty well stocked, but that's not to say we're not always on the lookout for new interesting books, particularly those that might appeal to some of the more reluctant readers. Often it's difficult finding books that are the right level for perhaps older children who are perhaps at a lower age reading level than what their actual age is, because obviously the easier books tend to be aimed at smaller children, whereas a Year 5 child or a Year 6 child doesn't want to read a book about Biff, Kip and Chipper going to the Kipper, it's not Chipper, is it? It's Kipper, going to the zoo, when actually they're Year 5 and 6. They want to read books that look like Year 5 and 6 books, but have a reading level that is lower for them to be able to to access. So that's definitely something that we're always on the lookout for.
We were actually saying in the room that I work in the other day that we have so many lovely storybooks. We've got some educational books, but they're not very engaging for really young children. And it was as a little boy came in and said that he was watching Planets on the telly last night. We're like, actually, there's no engaging educational books for the children of such a young age. So anything like that, I think, would be perfect for them. Quite often we find with non-fiction books, they're great for older children and stuff, but it's harder to find. I think it's really harder to find them for the younger age groups. And working with 2-year-olds, it's got to be engaging for them, otherwise they're just not interested. So we have books at the moment with flaps and touchy-feely bits, and sometimes it's nice to sit in a small group and do it with a small group rather than a whole class circle time. So it gives that opportunity to have a more focused activity with certain children, if it's the lifted flaps and touchy-feely and things like that, that's going to engage them more. From personal experience, I've got 2 little girls at home and they have a set of books and it's about an animal. One of them loses his temper and isn't very nice to his friends, and one of them teases his friends, and it kind of gives the moral of the story that that's actually not nice. And since then, touch wood, my eldest has stopped her tantrums as much. And things like potty training books, I've always found in settings really help and encourage children, because they can relate. You can relate to the character rather than just, you've got to go use the potty now. It's Pirate Pete likes his potty.
As an international school, parents often ask for books about teaching English, not just reading skills, but teaching English specifically. And so Usborne has come out with a few publications recently that my parents very much enjoy, for the EAL group. My parents like having story time books, things they can read at bedtime. The kids like checking out graphic novels. They love the nonfiction books that have flaps and easily consumed facts. They don't like long texts in a nonfiction book that they have to, sit down and absorb. This is primary school, so it may be different once you get up to the middle school age. My population absorb and consume quite often the sticker books and the activity books and the wipe away books, because the book stores here in Munich don't offer those kind of products in English. And so this is their one chance to get their hands on English materials like that, like the gamey consumable books, beyond just the reading books that we have in the library. For my library, I'm looking for hardback books that I can have withstand a couple years of heavy use. I like the younger version of the nonfiction books, the bees and the seeds and the life cycles. Those are really handy for my little preschool readers, because they're sturdy and they have simple information. And so most of the Usborne catalog from the younger grade is in my library. I do purchase those. Other books. My population don't often buy the story chapter books. I don't have a reason why. They're definitely purchasing the nonfiction books and the consumable books over the chapter books that Usborne offers. Perhaps because they've read them from the library since I have them here, and so they don't also want them in their house.
Okay, so at Ladywood, because we cater for a large range of abilities, we have a large range of books. We've got specifically a box for sensory learners. Now, this box, it's actually very small and it does need stocking up a lot, and people have to sign in a book and sign out. The sensory books that we have, they tend to be the electronic ones where you can push a button and they respond, or touchy-feely ones, or lift the flap books. So we as a special needs school, we need more of them. But then on the other side of it, we have high achieving learners who are reading at their age or above, and So we tend to get them books like David Walliams' series books that they can engage and follow all the way through. And then in the middle, we have a lot of the Kipper stories. But I think at the moment, they're quite old-fashioned, the ones that we have. So I think I did speak to the English team a while ago, and they said they're looking to get some more modern versions of those series for those that are accessing those. And other books that we tend to use will be themed towards what's going on. So if it's Easter, we'll have stories regarding Easter, and we'll theme a whole week on that story, or any other religious event. And finally, the other stories that we have, we often make these ourselves because they can be very specific to the child. They're social stories, so they'll be all about behaviour and how to behave. Say, for instance, a child keeps hitting another child, we'll make them a story about having kind hands. So it's a positive story, but we call them social stories, but they'll be very positive. So like how to be a good friend, but it is quite specific. But we do tend to make them ourselves because they tend to be very specific to each child. So they're the books we tend to use and access, and ones that we need more of.